This is Power 102 Digital Wednesday. Hard Talk starts now with host Fareed Ali, and we're expecting to have a very special guest on the program for you today. Hard Talk starts now. Good afternoon, Fareed.
Good afternoon, David. It's good to hear your voice. It's good to be here again. How are you doing?
I'm okay, rolling with the punches.
We are expecting our special guest to join us soon. I just had a brief conversation with someone who's assisting him. So to the listening public today, we have no other than Dr. Ferdie Ferreira, foundation member of the People's National Movement, uh, former elections officer of the People's National Movement, foundation member of not just the People's National Movement, but also the Organization for National Reconstruction. He was also political advisor to two prime ministers, Dr. Williams and Dr. Rowley. Political advisor to the former Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Carl, or Mr. Carl Hudson Phillips, Queen's Counsel. So he has quite a decorated CV, David. An important part of our history he would have shared firsthand. Sometimes we have to turn to academic books, editorials, newspapers, all sorts of primary information or primary material to get information as to what happened on the ground in Trinidad and Tobago. So Mr. Ferreira, Dr. Ferreira, was born on the 14th of June 1932. He is age 92, an octogenarian, as we put it. No, that's not octogenarian. Let me correct myself. Octogenarian is someone who's in their 80s.
Yeah.
So that makes him, I have to come up with, I think that's a different kind of genarian. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Maybe I don't want to say a nonogenarian.
Yeah.
Nonogenarian. I have to check that. You see, I don't interview people in the 90s. So I've never had that experience.
Right.
So we're just waiting to have him join us. I know he was on the link a bit earlier, but perhaps he's having a little connectivity issue. But we have the full hour and 45 minutes with him, and we should be sharing some more time with him for the listening public in successive weeks. So as you know, as his strength allows him, and he's in good shape, we should have him again in some future weeks to come. You may be wondering, or our listeners out there may be wondering, the purpose of having him here. I am simply of the view that our nation's history began in our narrative, for those of you all who would have studied it, from 1962 in terms of the independence of Trinidad and Tobago moving forward. Mr. Ferreira would have been involved on the ground with some of the, if I may say, famous, infamous, notorious politicians who we would have heard about in terms of narrative and in terms of legend and short story. People like John O'Halloran, not a politician, but a popular figure, Jean Miles, Kamaluddin Mohammed, and some of these stalwarts, John Donaldson, people, A.N.R. Robinson, George Chambers, people would have stood on the floor of our political life and our national narrative. And he would have walked that path with them. So what we're hoping to achieve is to hear some of the little nuances, the stories behind the stories, the things that we would not have read in the newspaper, we could not have had access to, but for someone who actually rubbed shoulders with these people. So hopefully he joins us in a short, as you would say, and we're able to get some more data. David, how's the weather out there? I know that we just briefed a storm. How's that been treating you? I know you're from deep south.
Yeah. But it has not been all that bad. It started off very overcast this morning, but it petered out into some brilliant sunshine. Then it became overcast again, and in coming to Port of Spain, it was okay. It was, a bit of sunshine. We had some cloud cover, but nothing to excite the mind as though it would rain. It's just an overcast sort of setting. But there's no rain. I know that right now Jamaica is experiencing the four the forerunners of the Hurricane Beryl. They're already feeling the effects of it, especially in the southernmost part of Jamaica. So I pray for them. I guess it has weakened a lot though. So the impact that they might have expected to experience, I think that it won't be that as deadly, but it's still very powerful. I know its wind speed has died down a bit, but the eye of it is crossing Jamaica by sunset.
But
Right?
the thing is, it already did so much damage to Carriacou.
Yes,
I feel for them. I mean, they said it's literally devastating Carriacou on the level where, you know, they would not only have repairs to do to the infrastructure, but but the nature in itself.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. I tell you, boy, it ain't easy. It ain't easy at all with those people.
The thing is, some of my friends in Barbados, when I spoke with them, said to me that if that hurricane had touched Barbados, it would set them back 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. Barbados
That,
is a very flat place too.
yeah. The trouble, we blessed in Trinidad, we don't have to deal with these disasters in the way that other islands do. For some
Um,
reason, I know we say God is a Trinity, but for some reason, I guess when it's making its way far south, it tends to, for whatever reason, maybe it's the wind change and so on.
well, I guess the geographical structure of Trinidad and Tobago, if I should put it like that, saves us a lot with the northern range, and you know, hurricanes don't like to climb too high; they get weakened. They say the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. So hurricane likes along heated waters. So and we've been experiencing some very lengthy periods of hot weather. So the seas are very warm, and that's like fuel for hurricanes. So uh, with us, the moment it approaches Trinidad and Tobago, it will have to come from a very southeastern direction to affect us in any sort of way. I see a
The,
guy trying to get in.
the thing is, it seems to like to take low hanging fruit.
Well, no, flat land. In other words, flat land. You know, um, flat land would afford that. You know.
Dr. Ferreira, how are you? Dr. Ferreira, how are you doing? You good?
Not bad. Duck up. I prefer ducker than doctor. Well,
It's
not
good
bad.
to see you now.
I prefer to be referred to as a ducker than doctor.
Okay. It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to see you. You're looking good. I was saying to David, David is the voice that you'll be hearing, but you wouldn't be seeing him. He's our keyboard operator, if I may put it that way. He's managing everything in the background. I was saying to him that an octogenarian is someone in their 80s. What do we call someone in their 90s? Doc, if an octogenarian, Dr. Ferreira, if an octogenarian is someone in their 80s,
A 90-year-old man.
what do we call you? Someone in their 90s?
We wish to. However you may wish to refer to it is acceptable to me.
Well,
A
I want
90-year.
yeah. I want to say thank you in advance, right, for making yourself available. It's always good to see you, and it's good to hear from you. I was introducing you whilst you were logging on, but I will share some of your data with the public. You received an honorary doctorate of human letters from the University of Trinidad and Tobago in September 2021. You're not only you're also a foundation member of the People's National Movement, a former elections officer of the People's National Movement, former labor relations officer of the People's National Movement, foundation member and party organizer of the Organization for National Reconstruction. You've been political advisor to Dr. Williams, to Dr. Rowley. Yeah. You also served as national officer for the Seafood and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. You're retired Deputy General Manager for the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. You served 33 years in the public service. Retired Managing Director of the Port and Maritime Services, former Executive Council member of the Caribbean Shipping Association, recipient of a special award, Dean of Doxford, TNT Shipping Association, political analyst, commentator, columnist. Dr. Ferreira, the list goes on. I mean, your CV speaks volumes. So let's begin by this. Tell us something about your relationship with Dr. Williams. A lot of us growing up, he would have died
My
as far back as 1981. Tell us when did you first meet Dr. Williams and what was your relationship like with him?
well, it's all yeah, it's all documented in my biography, Political Encounters,
Yeah,
1946-2016. There's a
yeah,
chapter there in which I express uh, publicly my first encounter with Dr. Williams at the Public Library in 1954 when he was lecturing publicly on national topics like education, birth control, under the auspices of the Trinidad Public Library. The librarian, Mr. Comer, and part of that scenario included the late Albert Gums, who was then the Minister of Industry and Commerce and Labor. That was my first encounter with him. He was coming down the steps in the company of Albert Gums, and when Gums drove off, Gums was then the minister. He was heading for his car, which was parked on I ride the library opposite Woodford Square there. And he asked, "What is the score?" We were playing a game, a cricket match in Australia. And of course, the time that must have been about. And I told him, my response was, "We don't want to hear the score. We want you to leave this Pudigi man and come into Woodford Square." In those days, I was an illegal attorney at the Woodford Square, one of those loudmouth characters who felt they knew everything.
uh-huh.
So I was extending an invitation to the learned great professor to join us at Woodford Square because he had never given any, all his lectures were internal. He never spoke outside of in other words, publicly would say like Woodford Square. Most of his presentations were at the library and internal institutions. So I was just making a request saying to come out and meet the people. That was my first encounter with him. This long before the birth of the PNM on the 24th of January 1956.
What sort of man was he? Was he somebody that the people can reach out to and chat as a man who would relate to the people on the street, the man on the street, or was he aloof?
I hope that answers your.
It does. What sort of personality was he? Was he someone that could relate to the person on the street, the man on the street, or was he an aloof sort of individual?
Well, we have no experience prior to his entry into politics of his that type of relationship with the people. We would refer to, in those days, we refer to people like Dr. Williams, Sir Hugh Wooding, Sir Courtney Hannis, all island scholarship winners, intelligent, well-educated, as elitists. They were not identified with the struggle, except at an academic level, in terms of Butler and Rienzi and the people, the trade union leaders, and some of the politicians, Victor Bryan, Ajula Singh, Norman Tang. They were not identified with the people's cause as such. So Williams was part of that. Prior to that, we looked at Williams as a brilliant successful scholar of African origin, but we never looked at him as a people-oriented person until he made that historical appearance and presentation on the 21st of June, I think it was 1955, my relations with the Caribbean Commission, when they refused to renew his contract.
All right.
I think that takes, so he was not really a public person. We refer to people like those in those days as elitists.
Right. It would be safe to say that the commission's loss was our gain when it is when his contract was not renewed. We had the benefit of him here, and his activism led him into politics.
So absolute. Well, you're so absolutely correct. Williams was an accident. Chambers was an accident. Manning was an accident. I say accident in the sense that it's clear evidence and information from his first presentation, my relations with it, that his ambition was to become chairman of the Caribbean Commission and not to enter politics. It was his entry into politics was a reaction of the refusal to renew his contract.
So would you say it was personal?
The commission's loss and his loss.
Would you say that his entry into politics was him weaponizing himself to treat with those persons who snubbed him in a different way?
Well, certainly that is how we reacted. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to get a copy of that presentation, my relations to you, it's quite clear that he was, I think the word bitter might be a little too strong, but he was disenchanted with the treatment meted out to him. Not only that, he became very annoyed with the local West Indian leaders, except for Norman Manley in Jamaica. He was very disappointed with people like Grantley Adams, Bertie Gums, Victor O'Brien, Bradshaw in St. Kitts, Continent, in St. Lucia. He felt that they did not support his cause to become chairman. The only West Indian leader at the time that identified himself with Williams' cause was Norman Washington Manley, father of Michael Manley.
Right. And
he made it absolutely clear that, he said clearly how he was treated and the fact that he was, well, we would put it, constructively dismissed.
Right.
And nobody in the Caribbean except Norman Manley stood up in defense of his cause. So his entry into politics, you can always get Professor Selwyn Ryan, Williams, the myth and the man, and I did an extensive interview with Selwyn in which I expressed the very opinion that I'm expressing here with you.
Would you say that Williams' success? Would you say that Williams' success as a leader was essentially fueled by the persons of equal mind around him, or was it that Williams himself led those around him and channel them in the direction of political office?
Well, when you're referring to Williams' success as the nationalist leader that brought us from colonialism to independence, the first thing you have to take that in the context of the other colonial and coming right up to South Africa a few years ago. The Williams' contribution, and by extension the People's National Movement, must be viewed in the of what happened to those countries. Because get it absolutely clear that that transitional period from colonialism to independence, if you don't get it right, the consequences of getting it wrong, I think you should be familiar with. What happened to most of those colonial countries in the Middle East, in Africa, like, for instance, Sri Lanka, which was Ceylon, the splitting of India between Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the assassination of two Indian prime ministers, Indyre and Rajiv Gandhi. You have Bhutto in, I mean, and the consequences that most of those countries, because of not having one, the right leader, and two, being victims of the exploitation in terms of human resources and education, then you suffer the consequences. You may end up with a Idi Amin. You may end up with someone identified, some of those leaders that got the independence but took the country in, like for instance, you had Burnham in Guyana, you had Gary in Grenada, you had the assassination of Buttigieg in Suriname. So William's contribution has to be viewed in that context, and there's no doubt about it that we were fortunate to have had at that time Eric Williams and the PNM to successfully navigate us through that transitional period that has served us in good stead in spite of the problems that we encounter from time to time. We are fortunate for Donald Trump.
Okay. Allow me to ask this. Would you say that from your personal interaction with Williams and your understanding of his personality
Yeah.
and how he thought, his thought processes, would you say that Williams' contribution in that initial period, in the germinal beginnings, was attributed to the fact that he carefully thought this thing out and recognized what was required of him, and he acted that role, or he executed that role
Well,
seamlessly?
well, Williams had an advantage in the fact that he was both a historian and a social scientist. So he was in a better position than most of the Caribbean leaders during that period to understand the social structure of the society, both at a cultural and at the colonial level, in terms of the indoctrination of the colonial. He was in a more advantageous position to understand the mentality, particularly the cultural behavior of West Indians than most of the other leaders. Yes, remember, he was a historian par excellence. And in addition to that, he was a disciple of the great Jawaharlal Nehru. You know, he had a tremendous amount of admiration for Nehru, who himself was a Cambridge scholar, and who, as far as William was concerned, was the greatest exponent of colonial history. You just got to read his books, the 1,500 pages letters to his daughter, which he wrote in prison. And there's another one that escapes me now, but these are documents that you all, as commentators, should get hold of. But we live in a society where reading is now conspicuous by its absence. It's Google.
Yes, yes.
Google and
When you look at the
get a Oxford. Nehru was
yeah,
born in 1892. Williams was born in 1911. But
right.
Williams had a tremendous amount of respect because of his knowledge of colonial history. And he almost patterned his struggle, not so much like Martin Luther King with Gandhi. He patterned his struggle almost after Jawaharlal Nehru and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana.
When we look at our the sociology of Trinidad and Tobago, if we look at the examine the society, um, we are one of those islands that had uh, the benefit of indentured laborers, the benefit of uh, a combination or a community of different ethnicities, adding its
Ingredient.
flavor to
Yeah. Cultural ingredient.
yeah, adding its own
Huh?
cultural flavor to our landscape. Tell me this: how, why do you think, and in what way can we attribute the fact that we've had such a peaceful political experience in terms of everyone coexisting in the same space, without any resort to violence? I mean, we've been a nation state for so long, and do you think that Williams understood
I'm not.
how to manage the society in a way to keep everybody feeling included?
Well, you just have to make a comparison with what happened in Guyana with Fobbs Bonham and Sadie Sagan, and the violence that took place there, the racial conflict. Fortunately for us, we escaped that, and we must thank our leader, Dr. Williams. First of all, we have had conflicts every now and then. Some racial conflict rears its head, but we're very fortunate in this country that we were not subject to what happened in Guyana, what happened in Grenada, and what happened in Suriname.
Right.
So that it is against that background you must judge the performance of Williams in keeping the society together and avoiding. And not only that, we were very fortunate in 1970 to have had Williams here to successfully navigate that mutiny and the Black Power movement that unsuccessfully attempted to overthrow the government by force. And it was then invariably without bloodshed. You see,
When
these
we examine,
discussions.
yeah, well, when we examine that period of where we achieved and acquired independence, there would have been some groundwork done by those stakeholders before. Let me say the same thing in another way. As early as the 1930s, when we had the labor riots, we had persons like Butler who would have labored in the vineyards, who would have challenged the colonial government, the crown. They would have challenged the crown on different levels, seeking a better life for Trinidadians, as we would say. Back then, we would not have been considered Trinidadians. We would have been, persons who existed under within the fabric of the crown colony government and were more or less the colonial peoples of England. But in the 30s, Butler and they would have labored in the vineyard and perhaps ushered in and did the groundwork for the PNM to come now and establish organized political activism. I know in looking at and reading your
Certainly
books,
you had.
yeah. In looking at your books and reading your books, you did touch on the fact that you followed Butler and you followed some of his ideas, his ideology. You I wouldn't say you were a disciple of it, but you certainly were in tune with the currents of what he was propagating. How would you say that Williams was able to relate to the people's quest for leadership and the quest for someone to arise and to present themselves to facilitate, not only self-government, but and not only internal government, but actually lay the foundations for us ruling ourselves in a manner of speaking? How would you say Williams contributed to that on the back of the labor movement and their struggles?
Even before, all right, even before Butler, there was Cipriani, who was considered to be the leader of the Barefoot Man. Cipriani went served in the First World War, 1914 and 18, and on his trips to while in the army, he encountered levels of discrimination. When Cipriani came back home, he started the Barefoot movement. That was one of the early. He was in before Butler, and but of course, Cipriani was what we would call of Caucasian origin, and he was a man, fairly wealthy man, came from a Caucasian family. And he started advocating for better working conditions and more representation for the people. Shortly after that, within the 20s, late 20s, early 30s, we saw the emergence of Uriah Butler, a Grenadian working in the oil field, who felt that Supriani was moving a little too slow, and there should be some intensification of the movement. Butler called it home rule. And in fact, they laid down the foundation for what subsequently became the PNM, led by Dr. Williams. There were people before. Matter of fact, Supriani was a strong advocate of West Indian Federation. So was Butler. And Williams, of course, came at a time when the country was more prepared for, or more receptive to that scholarly, articulate, constructive academic presentation that turned the whole thing upside down and put an unsuccessful end to the career of Butler. Just remember in the 1950 elections, Butler won 6 seats. By 1956, I think he won 1 seat, his only seat in St. Patrick West. So the people began to come to the conclusion that, look, Butler ate, like Supriani, Butler time had come. And it was time for a more progressive, articulate, constructive leader. And in other words, Williams was in the right place at the right time. Let's put it that way.
So it would be safe to say that Williams was able to capitalize on the foundations that were set by Butler. And he was introduced into the public narrative at a time when we were searching for a leader. And he was able to answer that need on some level.
Well, certainly, you see, our first involvement in representative government was on the 20th of October 1950. And unfortunately, not only the politicians, but across the political divide, have today not recognized the contribution of these pioneers. For example, our first representation at Executive Council, which preceded the cabinet, today there is little or no recognition of these first 5 ministers: Albert Gomes, Victor Bryan, Abdullah Singh, Tang Roy Joseph. As a matter of fact, they recently opened that beautiful highway from San Fernando to Point Fonte, and nobody either had the knowledge or the elementary decency name part of that highway after before from Grace Rose Ilak. I hope that the power to be are listening to what I'm saying today, because on the 20th of October next year, we will be celebrating 75 years of representing the voice of the people was heard in the Parliament, the Executive Council, under the speakership of Sir William Savory. And I have a copy of a message from the King to the Parliament.
Yeah.
That is what was like 19th October 1950 to October 2025 next year. I think the country, particularly the parliamentary, the government, opposition, for that matter, the national parliament, should celebrate 75 years of Yes, of people's representation at the highest level of government. That's when our first 5 ministers, and I don't know how many of you all are aware, if at all, of how they were elected. When the speaker called the chamber to order, he read a message from the King of England, who died in 1952, and the Queen's father. And it will be very interesting to see a copy of that letter to his subjects in the colony, in which he was commending them for this big historic constitutional achievement. Citizens of the country sitting in the executive council, which preceded the cabinet. We never got cabinet government in 1959. So the executive council presided over by the colonial governor until 1959, when cabinet was in prime minister.
Right.
But you see, these are well-documented facts that are seldom here. How many of you set next year congratulating the members of parliament? The speaker called the house to order. And read a message from the king, from the governor, and other Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Dominica, St. Vincent. And he asked the members of parliament, there was no senate, they were nominated to elect the ministers. The members elected, the members of parliament elected the ministers. Not as previously expressed, not the governor. He asked the 28 members of parliament to elect the 5 ministers. 2 of the elected representatives say they were not interested. The member from Arima, Charles Gums Neto, he said he was not interested. Edwin Duval, a businessman, they said they were not interested in ministerial position. And they elected these 5 individuals, not from any political party. They were all. Gums was from the POPPG, Brian from the Labour Party, Roy Joseph from the 8th Army in South, Norman Tang was an independent in Port of Spain, and Judah Singh was an independent. He was known as the minister of Sprains and Strains. He was a, what you call it, physiotherapist. From Grand Straits, Roussillak, they opened that highway recently, and they named it after 2 footballers. I forget the name now. I think
Sammy Llewellyn and Steve Archibald.
Not Sammy Llewellyn, Warren Archibald, and another guy from. I mean, I have no problem with these people getting some form of recognition. But how can we as a country forget the contribution of these pioneers who laid down the foundation for ministerial government and successfully did it without being members of a political party? I mean, without, when I say they were not party, they represented their own individual party. There was no party organization like the PNM, that the party will select, the prime minister will select it. It is the then governor, Sir Hubert Elvin Rance, called on the elected representatives to select 5 of their colleagues. And so we ended up with Gums, a local Caucasian, Victor of African origin, Tang of Chinese origin, Roy Joseph, a Syrian background, and Victor Bryan, the first Afro-Trinidadian to sit in the executive council. I can only hope, I was telling the member for Toko Manzilla 2 weeks ago, I can only hope that that new highway from Valencia to Toko, part of it would be named after Victor Bryan. These people made a contribution and laid the foundation for what we are enjoying today in a relatively peaceful democratic society. Sometimes I say politicians are their own worst enemies, because when they forget people and set that type of record and behavior, obviously their own contribution will be forgotten too. So these are things that conversation like this, like we're having this evening provides me with an opportunity to provide you all with some information hitherto unknown.
Yeah. Tell us something. The early beginnings of the People's National Movement and its political activism wasn't without its ups and downs. The PNM had lost the federal elections and they had lost the local government in the late 50s. I believe it's 1958, 59. Tell us something about that federal election in 1959. What are some of the things you would have gleaned from that?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that question at a time like this when all the political mosquitoes and zandolis are coming out the hole again to come together with the sole objective. These political mosquitoes, you don't know where they come from sometimes. They survive without water. This is exactly what they did in 1958 when they saw the power and the constructive performance of the PNM in 1956. These political zandolis decided that the only way to beat the PNM, some of them never spoke to each other. They had chronic antagonisms. Gums and Badis, Gums detested Badis, Badis detested. They came together under Badis Sagarat and formed the West Indian Federal Labour Party under Sir Alexander Bustamante from Jamaica. You see, the only intention at what we are witnessing today. The objective is to beat the PNM at any cost, and that never worked. It has never worked, and it will never work. There's some characters out there, they don't even have enough members to follow a small maxi. But the political leaders, I'm a leader. A leader in who? The only objective, beat the PNM at any cost. Drink champagne Monday. They bury the hatchet Tuesday, but they mark the spot. So it is a continuation of what you call ambitious political stupidity. All of them come together every morning. They wake up. Boy, come, let me join. A fella want to be commissioner of police. He want to be a political leader. He want to talk to Rowdy Monday and Kamala Tuesday. What it is they want? I mean, how? I mean, this is nothing short of political absurdity. If there is no problem in opposing the PNM, we live in a democracy. We need a good two-party system, but for God, something together that people will not only recognize and support, but there is a paper I sent to you all. I sent a copy of the formation of a political party, how we put the ONR together, how it was structured. Because the first thing you got to remember, the objective of a political party is to win elections and form the government. But how could you form a government when you have about 15 different political sandolis who want minister, want ambassador, who want ambassador, want contract? And they bury the hatchet to beat the PNM, but they mark this spot. So as soon as something happens, they go and take a hatchet and cutlass in your waist. So these are things the electorate. Make no mistake about it, whether we like it or not, whether we support the PNM or not. The PNM is the only stable political institution in the country. In and out, in good times and in bad times. The PNM has been there. Not that it is without mistakes. I mean, I was expelled from the PNM. I was the first party organizer in the history of this country. I was the party organizer. And it's documented of the ONR. So I too had my problems with the PNM. Carl Hudson Phillip, my late friend, took objections to William. The source of origin was the undated letter where Dr. Williams had sent out this. I saw Hamid Ghani wrote about it on Sunday. But Hamid Ghani, these brilliant political analysts that we have in this country today that write every Sunday. He wrote about the crossing of the flow on the undated level, but he made no mention of the most significant aspect of that, which is that undated letter split the PNM and was responsible for the massive defeat in 1986. It is the ONR that destroyed the PNM in the East-West corridor. They won one seat, Muriel Donovan and Lavantil. So he would write these things, talk about Pandey and Hector McLean and Roy Richardson who crossed the flow, and so on. But the most significant aspect of that undated letter was the emergence of the ONR. Under Carl Hudson Phillip, we are humble servant as party organizer. We lost the elections in 1981. In spite of the fact we got 91,000 votes, we didn't get a seat. The ULF got 68,000 votes, they got 8 seats. We accepted our defeat. The Constitution provided for that situation, and we lost. But by 1983, we put together we started the formation of a team, and we sat down. We won seats in the 1983 local government election. The one I was talking about now, Port of Spain, we won 4 seats in Port of Spain. We won 3 seats in Sandra. Unfortunately, after my departure as party organizer, they made the unfortunate way of joining the NAR and gave the support to the NAR that wiped out the PNM, the strongholds in the East-West corridor. Between Lavantil and Toko Manzanilla, the PNM won 1 seat. But no mention was made about that in the Sunday article. And that was a situation that came out of 2 things. One, Williams' announcement in 1981 that he was retiring from public life. 2, his unconstitutional, I use the word on, his unconstitutional return to office. And the 3rd one is demise in March 1981.
Tell us something. Had the PNM won the federal election?
So the emergence of George.
All right. Let's go back a little bit.
Well, all the political termites came together and gang up against the PNM.
Yeah. That was in 1986. Right. Tell us something. How do you feel the narrative would have gone? We're fictitious now. Had the PNM won the federal election in 1958, what was Williams' objective? What is he hoping to achieve? What was Williams hoping to achieve?
No. Just remember, the No. Don't get mixed up. The PNM lost. The party affiliated with PNM won the federal elections. The West Indian Federal. They won. The Williams, the West Indian party won. They lost in Trinidad, but generally they won and they became the federal party. But the opposition won in Trinidad. But generally, remember it was a federation. It wasn't Trinidad. It wasn't confined to Trinidad.
Right. It was a federation of 10.
So it made no difference. What made the difference was the historical tragedy of Norman Washington Manley, a distinguished, brilliant Rhodes Scholar, falling for Bustamante recommendation for referendum. The tragedy of the West Indian Federation was the Federation in Jamaica. It was a terrible mistake that infuriated Williams, who was one of the strongest advocate of a West Indian society. He went beyond that. You see, outside of the British West Indies, this thing should be expanded to the Caribbean to include some of the Central American countries.
Right.
But they Bustamante, God Manley, into Jamaica to call a referendum. And one of the few occasions I saw a different side of Williams that night after the referendum in Jamaica. He was bitter. He couldn't understand why Manley took the bait, and he couldn't understand the people in Jamaica voting against the Federation. Hence the reason he subsequently proceeded. By that time, he had made up his mind, no, I had enough of this. In addition to that, he was very dissatisfied with the ways some of the West Indian leaders reacted to his struggle for Shagaramas. You see, all these things. A lot of the West Indian leaders like Bradshaw and Grantley Adams and some of the other West Indians in the islands, Cato and them, felt that he should not have get into any kind of combat with the Americans. The Americans were destroyers. And they attempted to sabotage him. They felt that's like the Chamber of Commerce in Trinidad. The business community, they felt, why you getting into this? The Americans going to destroy you. And why you want back Shagaramas? The story with that, as soon as we get back Shagaramas, the same vagabonds wanted the land before the ordinary citizens like myself who marched in the rain on the 22nd, before we could get a bat in Shagaramas. The enemies of the PNM who was ready to destroy Williams for fighting for Shagaramas were ready to say the land belonged to them, and they won and it's going on there now. It's going on there. The best parts of Shagaramas today is owned by people who oppose the struggle for the recovery of Shagaramas. And we sit down and sometimes we forget these things. You're going down there as you pass the police gate and see that piece of land at Botigwari. The UNC government give with the water park. Look at that. It almost deprives the people of getting proper entry into the beaches. That the people, thousands of us marched on the 22nd, contrary to some misinformed, and sometimes the misinformation comes from scholars like Kojo. He said he was in the march to Shagaramas. I tell Kojo there was no march to Shagaramas, there was a march for Shagaramas. So I don't know which march he was in. He was a march in Chicago. They'll be saying these things sometimes. There was never any march to Shagaramas. On the 22nd of April 1960, we marched through Port of Spain, round the savannah, handed two petitions, one to the then governor, Sir Edward Beaton, the other one to the American ambassador. But he said, he write that and say he was in the march to Shagaramas. Sometimes this, yes.
But the beauty is we have persons like yourself who could set the record straight. Hey.
Next one said he and Williams and Nero went to Oxford University. That didn't happen. There are still people that they're telling you that they was in the march. I was in the march to Shagaramas. We never left the city of Port of Spain. So you see, all these historical events have a background, including the emancipation. I am a full disciple and a supporter of the emancipation celebration. I think it's the most important public holiday in the country, simply because emancipation in the eyes of the white man converted us, in the eyes of the colonial master, from property to humanity. As far prior to emancipation, people like you and I were considered property. Emancipated in the eyes of the colonizers. Emancipated made us humanity. So it is to me. But you go there, I mean, I'm fully supportive. I go every year, I make a contribution to it. But I'm yet to see one of the most significant aspects of the emancipation celebration, which is, and for the first time I'm saying it publicly today, the black people of African who blazed the education trail after the colonial left. People like Pudam David, who won an island colored man in 1885 at QRC, almost 50 years after emancipation. People of African origin were winning the island scholarship and blazing the education trail before the emergence of what we are seeing today with the Indian. People like Sir Courtney Hannes, Eric Williams, Dr. Annim Store, Dr. A.G. Francis, these were blazing the education trail in Trinidad and Tobago and putting down the foundation for the success we enjoy in almost every aspect, contrary to some opinions out there. Let's look and read what Trinidad and Tobago was like in early 20th century. And see who are the people. When the colonial masters left, it wasn't the Mahasabha. It was the people of African origin that were winning the scholarships, showing the former masters, give us the opportunity, we will make it if we try. And they did. And the records would show that almost every area of success in this country, whether it be sports, both internationally and both nationally and internationally, is people of African origin. I get some knowledge of the diaspora, but I'm yet to see a booth identifying people like Dr. Simeon Hayes, Dr. Pierre, when I define the first black man to own it. You never hear about Sir Henry Pierre Joe Pierre. These are the people that set the standards for the intensification of educational development in the country. But today, there's this perception that the Afro man backward show the dependency syndrome. So what I'm saying today, discussions like this gives us an opportunity not only to educate people of African origin, but the entire society. Yeah, the exhibitions, who winning the scholarships, and families like the Smart family, 12 children, all 12 professionals, the Hudson Philip, 4 children, all 4 professionals, the emphasis, the Hannes family. These are black people coming out of slavery education, but they're not vigorously intensifying the secondary education system by when the oil money came, the amount of schools that were built. Of course, it ended up with the water and the brandy. QRC today is now not the QRC that it used to be. So, I mean, all these things got to be put. And what you should do to get there tomorrow.
Right. Tell me something. Williams was able
I'll tell you
to...
a little more, not something.
Yeah, Williams was able to capitalize on the foundations of the labor movement. But once the PNM had assumed office, we had the Industrial Stabilization Act to deal with. He was getting a lot of resistance from the unions, and he said that a comment that was attributed to him was that we freed ourselves of the colonial masters, and we have resistance coming from within within our own society, meaning the trade unions pose a problem where the economic policies that the PNM had and wanted to implement, the labor movement in their fight to increase wages and in their fight to improve the conditions of workers in general. Williams was of the view, or seemed to be of the view or the opinion, that labor was not working in tandem with government in order to ensure what is better for Trinidad and Tobago. Tell us about about Williams' view in terms of
That is totally incorrect.
All right.
Totally incorrect. In 1956, out of the 24 PNM candidates, 4 were trade union leaders. Ulrichly, Union of Commercial and Industrial Workers. John Hackshaw, Oilfield Workers Trade Union. Odi Mohammed, former president of the Sugar Workers Union. And Donald Grenado of the Union of Commercial. 4 of the candidates out of the 24. 2 won, 2 lost. Lee won, Grenado won. The first general secretary of the PNM was Donald Grenado, a labor leader. The first PNM mayor San Fernando was Odi Mohammed, a former president of the Sugar Workers Union. So the PNM always had a powerful labor content. As a matter of fact, the first general council of the PNM comprised of about 5 or 6 trade unionists, Claude Drayton, Sam Worrell, Payne, and other trade union leaders. So the PNM always, what the PNM did not do, and deliberately so, is to have any trade union affiliation like the former West Indian government, like the Jamaica, Madian, Adams, the both, they came out of the bosom of the trade union. Williams said you can join, or the PNM, not Williams, the PNM policy, you can join the party, but there must be no trade union affiliation. As you know, the trade union, the TUC in Britain, is affiliated to the Labour Party. Members of the TUC contribute towards the election fund. Williams, the government didn't want any affiliation, but you were free. And the best time of the trade union movement, and it's documented, you can go and read it. The sugar workers under the PNM got 100% increase. They got a pension plan. They got a 40-hour work week. The oil workers, when I don't know if you heard about the 7 Sisters, when the big oil companies were capping the wells and leaving Trinidad to go for cheap oil in the Middle East. It was Williams and the PNM that they turned to for rescue. And in 1974, the PNM bought Shell for $100 million to save the jobs of the workers. Rosia, don't forget that. Subsequently to that, when BP Palaseco and BP Faizabad were planning to get out, they had enough for this. 1, they were having labor problems, and 2, they were getting cheap oil in the Middle East until OPEC arrived. Check your history, my dear brother. I like the questions you're asking, but do a little more reading and get the proper answers. It was the PNM that they turned to on the event study. Found a company in San Antonio, Texas called Tesoro. That's how Tesoro came into Trinidad. The government successfully they almost gave away BP Palaseco in order to save the jobs. A similar thing happened in 1985 when George Chambers bought Texaco to save the jobs of these workers. And they are the ones, George Weeks, the same McLeod, the Wilton Pair were demanding the government nationalize the oil company. So how they go? So how the government? The unfortunate part of it is they were striking every Monday morning. They had a record of it there. And not only that, the trade union leaders themselves were complaining about the extremists. So already the then Attorney General drafted the industrial stabilization, and they protested. It was too rigid, and you want to ban strikes, but something had to be done, and you just have to do a little reading, my brother, on what they did in Singapore. How Lee Kuan Yew, who came out himself at the labor movement, how he was able to get the responsibilities to understand That kind of stupid confrontation doesn't work, or it doesn't work in the interest of the people. Let me put it another way. You get up every morning and you want to strike and you demand. The trade union has to change, and I said it last week. They have to change the narrative now. The trade union movement in the country, them have valuable real estate. Some part owners get away. It's today in Trinidad. But the poor yesterday, we get on day after day. Only 1%, the success of the Indian business community. Remember, the rich in Trinidad today invariably were the poor. Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah.
Opportunities were available to all of us. So to come out with this talk, I understand the trade unionists are politicians. They come out, but sometimes they must stop mashing the political accelerator without putting in the proper political gear. And cut that out and try and sit down. The time has come for all parties to work together. The world is not waiting on you. The business atmosphere is very ruthless and could be very destructive at times.
Yeah.
So this getting up every morning and closing down the place and threatening the demand. Who are the invariably who are the most wealthy people in this country today? You talk about the 1%. They were peddlers. Patek, clothes on the head. The Indians selling milk. So we got to understand it. And again, for your own benefit, this is a total misconception that people of African origin have done. We have done fairly well. We could have done better. But we didn't do too bad, and we are not doing too bad. There are a lot of people of African origin in this country. They're successful business, own valuable real estate. But like everything else, we are not as successful, and we must find out what is the reason for that. People like you, these are the questions you must ask. Why are we, with the opportunities available, not as successful? And you would simply come to the proper investigation. You would come to the right conclusion. It's a cultural difference. The values are different.
I'm hoping you could clear up something that is still vague, and I think not only my memory, but maybe for the benefit of our listeners. It has been said there's a narrative that Williams would have opened up our shores to the persons up the Caribbean in terms of the other islands. Was it essentially to contribute to the labor market, or was there a political angle to that?
Again, you're engaging in absolute absurdities. Not you, sorry. That is totally who built the oil fields long before the PNM. Who built the oil field? The Grenadian and Vincentian and the Trinidadian, in almost every aspect of our early development, particularly after slavery and indentureship. Check and see who they were. They were here, coming here, long before. At one time, half of the police service in Trinidad were of Barbadian origin. So this foolish talk about Williams and the historical factor that in 56, the same Grenadian and they voted against the PNM. We lost the 2 seats. We lost St. Patrick West and we lost St. Patrick Central. So the islanders didn't vote for the PNM. And this foolish talk about William bring them here to vote for the PNM. A total absurdity and totally incorrect. They were here. They worked in the cocoa estates. They worked in the sugar field. The same, so Harold Robinson and them, Woodford Lodge, the big estates. were employing them to do work that Trinidadians after the abolition they refused to do. And almost every aspect of our development, the people of there are brothers and sisters that help. They build the oil. They build the early initiative in the oil fields to cut down the and going to BP, going to those forest park, forest reserve, and all. You know what? You pass and see them today with nice roads and nice houses. It's people from the Caribbean islands that almost are former slave labor that put this thing down today. You say you bring them to vote for the PNM. I don't know where you get that from. There's very few Trinidadians of African origin that doesn't have a Caribbean connection, including your humble servant. My mother is a Bajan, my wife is a Grenadian.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure if you check your own, you'll find out get a similar.
I have a Vincentian grandmother.
Yeah, you hear that?
Yeah.
Huh?
So
And
no,
you haven't
I follow
spoken
you
now?
now. No,
How she came, why she came.
Well, my
telling
grandfather
you.
was also Vincentian.
And I have no regrets about marrying a Grenadian woman. Huh? You what?
No, I was saying that I could relate to what you're saying, that my grandfather was also Vincentian. So I have that. I follow your
Look at that.
your reasoning.
But you know, you didn't check your history before he died. I tell you how he came here and why he came here. And not
He
only
died when I
that, they're the
was 4
people
years
that
old.
came. They came here. We are a migrant society. Nearly everybody came here. We like America. It's only the Caribs and the Arawaks and them that born here. All of us are migrants in some form or the other. All of us are immigrants. So to go and make that statement that politically stupid about bringing people here to vote for the PNM, and people continue with that level of unfortunate stupidness. It's like that's what Donald Trump saying. America cannot survive without immigration, without migrants. It cannot survive. If the Indian medical practitioner pull out from America tomorrow, the whole health system collapse.
Right.
Mike from India, Mumbai, one of the most powerful, one of the best computer schools in the world, and Bill Gates and these fellas go there and recruit them and bring them. They almost go head and head out with the Americans of owning the Silicon Valley. So that kind of foolish talk is ancient history. We should get away from that.
Tell us something about William's relationship with some of his the persons who would have been sitting in his cabinet. I would imagine that we were later to see that there was a fall-off between himself and Intyre Robinson, who was his finance minister. A lot of persons attribute that to issues arising out of the Finance Act. What was the relationship between Williams and Robinson like? At first, we were told that they were very close. Robinson's wife was one of the chief public servants, but then there was a fall-off between the two gentlemen, Robinson and Williams. What would you attribute to that relationship? To walk us through that relationship that Williams and Robinson shared, in terms of its initial period. And
Let's remember, Robinson was the first treasurer of the PNM, a graduate from St. John's College, Oxford, an attorney at law. Before he could get involved in private practice, he entered the political arena, fought the election 56, lost to James by 200 votes. Then he fought the further election. He won the further elections And in 1961, he won the seat in Tobago, and by 1960 it became our first Minister of Finance of independent Trinidad. There was, as far they had a very healthy relations, because we all in the party as a foundation member look forward to Robinson as the successor to Williams. Unfortunately, or fortunately, one or the other, the Finance Act is what was responsible for, this is my opinion, from the information available to me, what brought about the antagonism or the conflict, however you may wish it, was the Finance Act. When Robinson became Minister of Finance in 1960, he, on the advice of an Austrian economist called Dr. Weintraub and his wife, well qualified, decided to transform the colonial financial structure to a national finance, which is what all governments are supposed to do. And they sat down these well-educated, qualified people. Robinson was Minister of Finance. His wife was a scholar, and economist called Dr. Weintraub, who was the IDC, and they put together a document called the Finance Act to almost revolutionize the finance structure in the society, which was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, the Chamber of Commerce went to tongue on Robinson. The business community beat him like a pan. And Williams, I don't know who advised, reacted, and in my opinion and from my knowledge, in a reactionary manner. And he took the newspapers in those days, by the Guardian and what the Express, but they went to tongue on, we gonna mash up the country, the business people, we will get known, the usual harry-carry, political harry. They went for Robinson, Douglas, and Williams, instead of supporting Robinson, removed Robinson as minister, took the portfolio, and made Robinson Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is controlled almost fully by the Prime Minister. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, very little of the major decisions that are made without the approval of the Prime Minister. So while it carries a sort of prestigious name, it doesn't like the Foreign Affairs in Europe. These are powerful ministries where the minister prepared for the Trinidad, the ministry doesn't carry that level of authority. Brilliant. And his scholastic achievement for a human being. He bowed under the pressure. He then Chamber of Commerce, and they went to someone. They almost a similar thing occurred with the Public Order Act with Carl Hudson Phillips. Carl was asked to draft because of what was going on in the country. And I repeat, I said it some time ago, Carl Hudson Phillips might have seen something brewing that we did not see. Hence the reason for the crime in this country today. Carl Hudson Phillips, my dearly beloved friend, there was indiscipline, and he drafted the Public Order Act to curtail, went to tongue on Carl. Again, they beat him like a tenapan, and Williams did not support him. So on these two issues, I have my disagreements with my mentor, Dr. Eric Williams. He sacrificed Robinson on the altar of the Finance Act, and he sacrificed Carl on the other public order. He did the records. But he's a human being. When the political pressure comes down on you, sometimes you make these.
Right.
And you,
If you could
next
shed
one,
some light.
I mean, the
If
thing
you
that
could
be
shed
saying,
some light on this.
don't pay no property tax. Well, I mean, don't no polygraph test. But if you are no cocoa in this, you're in for. I take any polygraph. You want me to take a polygraph test now?
Right. Shed some light on the treatment of Robinson's wife. I hear you in terms of he was used. I mean, Robinson fell victim to the public pressures placed on Williams, but Williams' wife was also a very senior public servant. It was said that her relationship with the PNM, or her relationship and the opportunities that she would have had, would have suffered also in the wake of. She basically was isolated.
I don't know. I don't know where you pull that off. I am not aware of that. Robinson's wife was not a politician. She was a public servant. And as far as I'm concerned, she continued to be a public servant. I don't know that she was victimized and all this kind. I don't know where. I hope you have evidence to prove what you say. I have no evidence to the effect. As far as I'm concerned, Mrs. Patricia Robinson, a well-qualified, highly respected woman, continued to do her job. But she was the wife. She just happened to be the wife of A.N.R. Robinson. Like Sharon Rowley is the wife of Dr. Keith Rowley. She can't escape some of the criticism that we her husband, but as far as I'm concerned, she's an eminently qualified, highly respectable person. So I am not linking that at all. She continued to work until she retired.
All right.
Whatever Williams and Robbins, as far as I'm concerned, she was not a politician, never a politician, and never expressed no political opinion. She was what I would consider to be the exemplary public servant. So don't go and buy into these.
So it would be a myth to
standpoint.
say, it would be a myth to say that any narrative that speaks to her being victimized as a result of the fallout between her husband and the Prime Minister, between the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, that did not occur. She continued her public life in terms of public service uninterrupted. In your report.
Yes, correct. And got her pension and everything. They had a beautiful house in Ellerslie Park. I used to frequent it. So I don't know of any victimization. That kind of talk must be backed up by evidence, not wild standpipe talk about who victimized. I mean, I'm a victim of victimization, both in the PNM and outside the PNM. And I have the evidence to back it up. I have applied for a job on the port. I was to be promoted. Huh?
No. I appreciate what you say.
Yeah. No, but I have no. I'm the political arena. Someone get a carpet every now and then. So I ain't gonna. I mean, but she was not in it.
All right.
There were people in the political when the board agreed to my promotion. Out of due respect, I don't want to call the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister told the chairman under no circumstances should I be promoted. I'm telling you what the chairman told me. So, but I expected that because I was expressing my opinion as I usually. So if you throw your hat in the ring, you don't understand. You likely you might get a right hand.
Right.
But she was not. I don't know of any evidence that she was victimized.
All right.
Victimized or anything like that.
when we look at this at that early cabinet, you wrote in your book that there were 3 doctors in that cabinet. I believe it was Williams, um, Patrick Solomon, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, and Errol Mahabia.
Winston Mahabir, Dr.
Winston
Eric
Mahabir.
Williams, Island Scholarship, QRC College, Dr. Patrick Solomon, Island Scholarship, St. Mary's College, and Dr. Winston Mahabir, known as Silver Tongue from QRC College 3. So the PNM was initiated with political champagne, not Kakapuram.
Okay. Tell us
Mary
your
Constantine,
impression
an
of,
attorney at law, Gerard Montano, a university graduate.
tell us your impressions of Patrick Solomon. You know, one of the narratives surrounding him was that his stepson was arrested and he went to one of those police stations in Port State and demanded his release. When Williams was confronted on what Solomon did, Williams stood his ground and supported his cabinet colleague. Shed some light on that in terms of what is your take on that? Is that a correct narrative or is it false?
Repeat it. I'm not hearing you clearly.
Okay, good. There's shed some light on Patrick Solomon. There was a narrative that Patrick Solomon was very close to the Prime Minister, so much so that, and I'm asking you to comment on whether this is true or false.
It's interesting. You see, again, that's an
We seem to be experiencing some. Are you hearing me? I'm just trying to. Dr. Ferreira, are you there? We're having a slight connectivity issue. I'm hoping that we can resolve that.
I'm not getting.
Dr. Ferreira, are you hearing us? Dr. Ferreira.
It seems like we lost our guest there, right?
Yeah, but I think he would reconnect. He would reconnect.
Yeah.
So to those of us who are listening out there, the voice that you're hearing is the voice of Dr. Ferdie Ferreira.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ferreira is sharing, some of the history he would have experienced, and he would have been on the ground with Dr. Williams, Winston Mahabir, Patrick Solomon, the foundation members of the People's National Movement, and persons who would have contributed to national life in a very deep and meaningful way. So we've been sharing this afternoon with him, trying to get some clarity on some of the things that we have learned through the years, which whether it's true or false, and he's shedding some light and clearing some ground with us.
Well, I had sent you some comments here. One person is saying, one of the persons to always stop and pay attention to. Great program. Fantastic interview, Mr. Ali. Thank you. Ferdie, a knowledgeable African man in our society. A man with a lot of history. Trust me. Some of the statements I'm hearing here, because as a youth man, I always tell people I had a different liking towards politics. I had this feeling about politics that the kind of democracy or the kind of democratic sort of governments that we formed weren't too much in sync with bringing people into the fore, if you understand what I mean. It was more like still, I used to find it like it's still colonial and, and so on and so on. But when you listen to Ferdie's information about how things developed and what caused it to go in certain directions, then you can understand why. The 1970 revolution and so on. It gives us it gives us the insight as to what really transpired that caused it. Because Trinidad, I always say Trinidad should have been the financial capital of the Caribbean. There's no two ways about that. We always had that prowess and the ability to. But the sort of infighting on political grounds, on political turfs. Um, I too used to more be attracted to the same NJAC, you know, and the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. But he said some significant stuff about the unions. And what we come from South, eh? South is what we refer to as the oil belt, and from down on that side. Oh, right, he's back with us.
You're back with us. Great to see you.
Yeah.
So let's get to the question that I had before we lost contact. I was asking you to comment on Patrick Solomon, Dr. Patrick Solomon. There's a narrative, and I just want to hear your take on that. There's a narrative that Patrick Solomon had a very close relationship with Dr. Williams, and Dr. Williams stood by Solomon over the years that they were in government together. And there's also, I don't want to say it's a myth, I want you to clarify this. They said that Solomon was associated with a narrative that his stepson was arrested and he went to one of those police stations in Port of Spain and demanded his release. How true is that? Dr.
Well, there's a fact that there's a well-known fact that his stepson was arrested, and he made the unfortunate mistake of going to the police station instead of communicating directly with the commissioner or getting somebody to be here. He was the Minister of Home Affairs. There was no Minister of National Security. Well, that had nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, he was removed from the ministry, and there was an outcry in the party because they felt it was an injustice to a man who had served the country $1 billion. As a matter of fact, in 1956, he was the only politician of the 13 successful candidates. He was the only one with any political experience. He had served in the parliament from 1946 to 1950. He was defeated in 1950 by Norman Tang. So there was an element in the party that felt that he was not fairly treated. And Williams brought him back. But what exactly transpired that created a conflict between them, which he was subsequently removed. I think you should be careful. Solomon has written a book and he has explained what was responsible for the conflict between Williams' behavior. He was not satisfied. Williams was no Jesus. Williams is not to be canonized. Williams was a human being, and he was not the easiest hombre to work with. One of the first victims was Larry Constantine, one of the most respected, if you don't know, you will not know, one of the most respected black men that ever walked the face of the earth was a man called Larry Nicholas Constantine. In fact, William was so close that when his daughter went away, she stayed at Constantine, Larry and Norma's house in London. And for whatever reason, a conflict developed between them that the late Larry Constantine at a lunch asked me, say, Ferdie, what have I done, Bill? Williams had some strange mannerisms. I mean, there are stories that he was bipolar. And it was no different with C.L.R. James, one of his mentors. Capitalism and slavery out of the black. So Williams had some peculiar characteristics. It wasn't too difficult for him to dispose in what was we call the proverbial doghouse. I was a victim of that. The only difference between me and them is that I didn't take it. I retaliated. And it's there in the book. There's a story in the book. Here lies Ferreira, 2 birds for 1 man. I don't take spirit lash. But exactly what was responsible for that, because As a matter of fact, Williams is the man to get us to persuade Solomon to re-enter politics. After he defeated in 58, Pat Solomon was done with that. His profession went to the dogs. He was just rebuilding his profession as a medical practitioner. And we went and begged him to join the nationalist movement, joined Williams, only to become a victim of Williams' peculiar characteristics. Williams, was no saint. He had a long history of his attitude towards his friend, including his dearly beloved friend, Dr. Halsey McShine, Dr. Courtney Bartholomew, who will give you, these are people I've spoken to and give you some stories about his peculiar behavior. So it's all part, I suppose, to say there's a thin line between madness and genius.
When we've heard these stories of John O'Halloran who would have been one of those early cabinet members. There's so much narrative surrounding his name. David Rudder sang about it in that song Panama. What was O'Halloran's big contribution to the PNM in those early days? What did he bring to the table?
John O'Halloran didn't go to Panama. John O'Halloran went to Canada. The man that went to Panama was Hawaii. There's a today.
I think we're having some connectivity issues again.
There is
Dr.
no
Ferreira.
proper documentary evidence that with Hello?
Tell him what you just said. Repeat what
you just said. Williams did not go to the way. I didn't know how O'Halloran went. Yes. So
we're having a connectivity issue for those who are listening there. We're trying to clear that up. But Dr. Ferreira, are you hearing us? If you can repeat what you just said, it would be great. I think we're just having a slight connectivity issue.
Huh?
We were having a connectivity issue just now. If you could just repeat your point on O'Halloran. We were trying to.
So you have to do a little more delving into that. I can't give you but
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. I gather you're saying that we have to we don't have enough information there to comment on that. What were your impressions of O'Halloran? What sort of personality was he? What were some of your impressions of O'Halloran? What sort of personality was he? Your impressions of him?
O'Halloran, I wrote an article, called me fanatic, and I used to call him cock in hand, simply because he was a gamecock fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice unfortunately, he entered the sanctuary of corruption and he paid the price for it.
Yeah.
But in terms of, as far as I am aware, this person, fortunately, he get attracted to the finer things in life and took the wrong road. But he was a people's, he never moved out when they go at him. He was always available, always accessible. And if you look at the Gomaten today, you've got the pioneer of that was John O'Halloran.
Mm-hmm.
All the Diamond Boulevard, the two secondary schools there. He represented the Gomaten from 1956 to 1970.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he must not be forgiven, but he should not be forgotten.
How did Williams relate to him? Was it just a fall off in the relationship and you removed him, or did Williams remove him from the?
Another thief, but they don't remember the things he doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He demanded all that. Yeah. Imagine you get a house in the.
David, are you there?
Yes, Ferdie, I'm here.
Okay, we are just around 5:56. Our connectivity has deteriorated considerably. So maybe what we can do is David will just you and I take it through to 6 o'clock. It's just about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring things to a close. To the listening public, what we will do, as I promised earlier, that this is a two-part series. I'm going to bring back, and we're going to have access to our guest, Dr. Ferdie Ferreira, next week again. If you noticed, and you may have noticed, that I'm walking him and having him take us through the narrative, year by year in terms of decade by decade. So we're going to get into some of his views of the politics on the ground as it stands now.
I see he's trying to come back on stage here.
Right.
Okay.
Dr. Ferreira, I know we've been having some connectivity issues, but we appreciate your efforts. Yeah. Tell us about some of the pros, the pros of John O'Halloran. Some of the things that he would have done. People remember him for other things, for the dark side of his public persona. But
I was telling you a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's why I said it. He must not be forgiven, but he should not be forgotten. What he did for the people, all those nice roads, you see. Oh yes, obviously, apparently, he became attracted, as I said, to the finer things in life and took the wrong road. But in terms of, it's difficult to compare.
David, maybe we can wrap things up. I'm not. I think we've lost some connection.
Yeah, his audio.
Yeah.
Listen, hold on for it. Hold on.
Dr. Ferreira, are you hearing us?
His mic is muted.
Or maybe we could, if you could unmute your mic. Your mic seems to be. Yeah, the mic. Are you hearing us now?
Okay. Oh boy. One more time. Give it one more try, please.
Dr. Ferreira, are you hearing us? We were just struggling a bit in terms of the connectivity.
Your audio, yeah.
Is your audio? Maybe you can put on the audio.
Yeah, the microphone is off.
The microphone seems to be off.
Or muted, as they say.
If you can unmute it. To the listening public, we've had Dr. Ferdie Ferreira sharing his time and this afternoon with us. We are just about 5:55. We could wrap up at this time, David, and next week we would we would
Yeah,
continue.
Okay. Yeah, it's going off and on.
Yes, it's
Okay, hold it right there. Don't touch anything again. Let's see if we can get his closing remarks. Oh boy.
Dr. Ferreira.
No, it's muted again. It's muted again.
Yeah. But let's wrap things up. To the
Yeah.
listening public, we will continue next week with Dr. Ferdie Ferreira.
Yes.
We've been having the benefit of his voice today, the 3rd of July. We look forward to another conversation with him. It's another part in the series. We'll be moving forward in terms of him sharing his involvement in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, politically and otherwise. So we want to thank you all for your time. Dr. Ferreira, thank you for your time. We look forward to talking with you next week again. Thank you. David, it's in your hands.
Yes, Ferreira. I'm here with you. I've been trying to understand what's happening with their microphone. It's still muted. But it will be nice to have him come back. I mean, a lot of people in the comments chat have appreciated what they heard today. Okay, let me see. Leave it right there. You hear me, Dr. Ferreira? Yes, it's
Hello?
good.
Yeah, tell them. Talk.
Hello?
We're
Yes,
hearing you now.
yes, we're hearing you now. We're about to close.
We're closing off for the afternoon. We're gonna rejoin you next week. Hopefully you'll share some more time with us next week, Wednesday, and we can continue where we left off. So we just at that point talking about we're getting into that period beyond the mid-60s now. So thank you for your time. We'll chat with you next week again. To the listening public, Dr. Ferdie Ferreira has been sharing his afternoon with us. Thanks for your time, David. It's in your hands. Blessings to the public. Blessings to you, and be safe, David, on your way home.
Thank you, Dr. Ferreira. Certainly, we'd like to ask you some questions next Wednesday, right here at Power 1 Digital. Thank you so very much. That's it for today's edition of.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
And
That's
you?
it.